The smoke alarm woke me at 2 a.m., its sharp sound piercing the darkness. I smelled it before I was fully conscious. It was the smell of burning chemicals, not wood or tar. I tried to open my bedroom door, the old-fashioned keyed kind my father had installed throughout his Victorian home 40 years earlier, because he loved the old-fashioned style. The kind my brother Julian knew how to lock from the hallway. Smoke was already seeping under the door, thick and black. I ran to my window, pushed it open, and looked down at the 15-foot cliff that led to the brick courtyard. A broken ankle would have been better than death. But there was another option, the back staircase. The 1920s servants' staircase, when this house was built, was narrow and hidden, connecting my floor to the kitchen. I grabbed my phone from the trunk and crept to the back of my room, speaking softly where the air was cleaner. The hidden door was behind the bookshelf, a panel that looked like a wall but opened if you knew where to push. My father had shown it to me when I was 10 and made me promise to keep it a secret. He'd always been worried about fires in old houses. The stairwell was thick with smoke but still no flames. I groped my way down in the pitch black, one hand on the wall and the other in the butter. The door below opened onto the kitchen. I stumbled out, panting, my lungs gasping for fresh air. Through the kitchen window, I saw my mother's Mercedes parked across the street, the interior light on. She was sitting in the driver's seat, watching the house, just watching. I didn't stop to process what that meant. I ran out the back door into the yard in the cold November air and called 911. The fire department arrived, and the police came with them. By the time the fire was contained, the entire second floor was destroyed. My childhood bedroom was gone, while Julian's remained untouched. The office where my father died 3 months ago was damaged but not destroyed. The fire chief questioned me while paramedics checked me for smoke inhalation. I told him about waking up locked inside, the smell of accelerants, and how I escaped down the servants' stairwell. I told him about my mother's car parked across the street. He asked me neutrally, "Are you saying someone locked you in and deliberately set the fire?" "My brother, Julian. He's the only other person who has keys to those bedroom locks." "Where is your brother now?" "I don't know. He doesn't live here. I'm the only one who's lived here since my father died." The police found Julian in his apartment. They took him in for questioning. He said he'd been home all night and hadn't been near the house. He seemed genuinely shocked when they told him about the fire. But the GPS data on his phone told a different story. He was parked 2 blocks from the house. A neighbor's security camera showed his car passing by and then turning back. My mother's story was less credible. She claimed she was driving while suffering from insomnia and that she happened to be passing by when she saw smoke, so she stopped to ask if anyone needed help. When they showed her the timer that proved she had been parked there before the fire started, she changed her story. She said she was worried about me and wanted to check on me, but didn't want to disturb me so late. So she sat in her car trying to decide what to do. Julian was arrested on suspicion of arson. My mother was arrested as an accomplice after it was discovered she had been in contact with him by phone before and during the fire. Forensic analysis of their phone records showed text messages between them that night, though they had both deleted them. The phone company's records confirmed the messages. Data recovery specialists would eventually be able to retrieve their contents. I was in the hospital being treated for smoke inhalation. The detective assigned to the case, a meticulous woman named Detective Laura Vance, came to interview me. "We need to understand the motive," she said, sitting by my hospital bed with a notebook in hand. "Why would your brother want to hurt you?" "My father's inheritance," I replied. "Julian thought he was going to inherit everything. We had a fight. The will said we should split everything equally. But there wasn't much in the will, just the house and about $200,000 in savings. The real money my father had transferred before he died." Detective Vance's pen stopped writing. "Transferred it to where?" "To an irrevocable trust. $12 million established before his death. I am the sole trustee and primary beneficiary. Julian was supposed to receive $100,000 a year for 10 years, provided certain conditions were met. After that, nothing. The bulk of the estate was mine." "Did your brother know about this trust?" "No. My father deliberately kept it a secret. He didn't want Julian to know because he was worried about such a reaction." "What conditions were attached to your brother's distributions?" I handed her a file I brought from the house before the fire. "Documents I've kept since my father's death. No criminal record, no drug use, maintaining a stable job, attending family therapy sessions. My father was trying to force Julian to get his life right. If he violated any condition, his distributions would cease, and that money would revert to the trust permanently." Detective Vance read the will documents. "So, your brother thought he was going to inherit millions, but in reality, he was going to get $100,000 a year if he behaved himself, and you were going to get everything else. He didn't even know the will existed. He thought the house and savings were all he had, and that we would split it equally. He was wrong about both of those things. When were you going to tell him about the will?" My father's lawyer was supposed to tell him about the estate at the final settlement hearing. The will had already been created and funded. There was nothing to dispute. It was just a matter of informing Julian of his conditional distributions. She looked up from the documents. So, your brother tried to kill you for an estate that didn't exist in the way he imagined. Apparently. The next few weeks were filled with investigations and legal proceedings. Data recovery specialists retrieved Julian's deleted text messages. They were damning conversations with our mother about how to manage our father's estate. Julian said I was standing in the way of him getting what he deserved. Our mother suggested that accidents happen in older houses, especially with faulty wiring. They had planned it, not well but deliberately. Julian would lock me inside, set the fire, and make it look like an electrical fault. Our mother would be nearby as a false witness, ready to testify that she hadn't seen anything suspicious. They divided my share of the inheritance, which they valued at about $6 million based on the house's worth and what they assumed were our father's assets. They had no idea about the trust, no idea that what they were trying to steal didn't exist in the way they imagined. The district attorney charged Julian with attempted arson and conspiracy to commit arson. Our mother faced a charge of conspiracy to conceal a crime. The evidence was overwhelming. GPS data, phone records, deleted messages, my mother's presence in the house across the street, and Julian's movements all matched the sequence of events surrounding the fire. Julian's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. 20 years for attempted murder with the possibility of parole. The district attorney's office consulted with me. The final decision is yours. The district attorney told me, we can take this to court and we might win, and he'll get 25 to 30 years, or we can accept the plea deal, guarantee 20 years and save the cost of a trial. What about my mother? She's negotiating separately. Her lawyer argues that she didn't know Julian was actually going to do it, that she thought he was just venting his anger. We're offering her 8 years if she testifies against Julian, and 10 years if she doesn't. She sat in her car and watched the house burn, knowing I was inside. I told her, I didn't know, that's complicity. And I agree. But proving what she knew versus what she claimed to know is harder than proving what Julian did. In the end, Julian accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 17 years. My mother refused to testify against him and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The estate was settled while they awaited sentencing. Julian's lawyer attended the hearing via video link from jail. My mother was present in person, having been released on bail pending sentencing. Robert Matthews, my father's estate attorney, explained the structure of the trust to Julian for the first time. I saw Julian's face on the screen as he realized the truth. The house he tried to kill me to inherit was valued at around $900,000, but it was encumbered by a $600,000 mortgage. The savings he thought would amount to millions of dollars were only $200,000, to be split between us, with most of it going toward legal fees and damages. The real money, $12 million, was in a trust he didn't know existed, under my complete control, and its distributions were subject to conditions he flagrantly violated by attempting to kill me. The trust was set up before your father's death, Robert explained in his characteristic legal voice. It was financed through a carefully orchestrated transfer of assets from various accounts and investments. Your father was very deliberate about this. He wanted to ensure that the bulk of his wealth was protected and distributed according to his wishes. Julian's lawyer leaned forward and asked, You mean there was no estate? That everything was in this trust? Robert confirmed. The estate consists of the house and approximately $200,000 in liquid assets. The rest of the assets, an investment portfolio, life insurance proceeds, and business shares, were all transferred to the Morrison Family Trust before your father's death. It is completely separate from the estate under trusteeship. The trust documents state that any beneficiary convicted of a felony forfeits their entire share permanently. Robert continued, looking directly at the screen displaying Julian's face. This money belongs to the primary beneficiary, your sister. In addition, any beneficiary who harms another beneficiary forfeits their entire share in the trust. So, even if you succeed in appealing your conviction, which is unlikely given the evidence, you will have no right to the estate because of your documented actions toward your sister. Julian didn't say a word. Neither did his lawyer. There was nothing to say. Robert continued. The house will be sold to cover your legal defense costs and the compensation your sister is entitled to for the physical damages and emotional distress. After deducting attorney's fees and compensation, there will be approximately $40,000 left from the estate, which is normally divided between the two children. However, since your criminal actions directly caused the physical damage, your sister is entitled to your share as additional compensation. My mother's face went pale. She didn't understand anything that had happened. She had helped her son exploit her daughter for phantom money they couldn't possibly access. The trust accounts had been frozen, but not in the way Julian and my mother had feared. They had no right to access the trust accounts because they hadn't even known they existed. But they had opened credit cards and taken out loans based on their expected inheritance. They spent money they thought they would receive, accumulating debt against an estate they would never inherit. When their creditors discovered there was no inheritance, and that the estate was effectively insolvent after legal fees and compensation were deducted, they froze all of Julian and my mother's accounts, trying to recover what they could. My mother's car was repossessed. Her house went into foreclosure. Julian had nothing left to freeze. He had spent it all. I attended my sentencing hearing. Julian showed no remorse and remained convinced that I had somehow deceived him. My mother cried and apologized, saying that Julian had manipulated her and she hadn't understood what was happening. The judge didn't believe her, and neither did I. The house was sold. After paying all the legal fees, repair costs, and compensation, only $38,000 remained. It went to me. Julian got nothing. My mother got nothing. The trust continued to generate income through my father's carefully structured investments. I hired a financial advisor to manage it, kept only what I needed to live comfortably, and reinvested the rest. I bought a small house in another state, a modest and safe home, nothing like the Victorian mansion where I nearly died. Julian will become eligible for parole. My mother will be released. I've already written letters to the parole board explaining that I consider them a continuing threat to my safety. I've documented everything. I have restraining orders ready until they're released. People sometimes ask me if I've forgiven them, if I plan to eventually reconcile. They say, family is family. But my family tried to burn me alive for money they didn't understand. They locked a door, lit a fire, and watched from their car as their daughter and sister lay dying. Some things are unforgivable. Some relationships are unforgivable. My father knew what Julian was capable of. That's why he structured the trust the way he did, with his conditions and safeguards. He knew my mother would encourage Julian, that she would choose her spoiled son over her difficult daughter. He had witnessed it throughout my childhood. He couldn't protect me from the immediate consequences of his death, but he did protect me from the long-term repercussions. He ensured they would have no incentive to reveal their true nature, to show who they were and what they were capable of. The money they tried to kill me for was already mine. The wealth they thought they would divide was designed to protect me from them. The inheritance they thought would enrich them was designed to expose them and strip them of everything. My father's last gift to me wasn't just $12 million. It was the certainty that when Julian and my mother faced the consequences of their abusive and manipulative lives and their final attempts, they would have only themselves to blame. They burned down a house for money that was never theirs. They destroyed their lives trying to steal what they could never have. As for me, I was spared everything my father wanted for me: his fortune, his house, and the freedom to never see either of them again.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है। अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना बहुत ही दर्द भरता है। मेरे साए भी मुझसे अब जुदा होने को कहते हैं। तुझे खोने की राहों में ये आंसू बहने लगते हैं। कहाँ जाऊँ कहाँ ढूंढूं मेरा वो साजो सामा, तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू, मेरी ही रूह का मका तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था। वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, दर्द का